morning, everyone, and welcome to the Marshall Adult Community Center. We thank you for coming out today for the 2018 Lyon County Sheriff's Candidates Forum. Big thanks to the City of Marshall, Studio One. Here you see their cameras. Also the Marshall Adult Community Center with Barb and Heather here. And I'm Heath Radke from KMHL and Marshall Radio. So thanks to everybody for coming out. A very important forum here today to get kind of the first word from many of these candidates on what they see as the future of the sheriff's seat here in Lyon County. So we're glad that you all were able to come out. Today's forum will also be broadcast this afternoon at 3 o'clock on 1400 AM and 1017 FM KMHL, so we encourage you to tune that in there or kind of direct folks there. Studio One also has their website, marshallstudio1tv.com, and you'll be able to see the forum back there as well, so we encourage folks to find that there. Thanks to all four candidates for being here today. They'll be on the August 14th primary ballot. And seated in alphabetical order to my left, Stephen Lawaji, Jim Marshall, Tony Rolling, and Eric Wallen. Thank you guys for coming out. Just kind of giving you an idea of the ground rules here today and how we're going to run things. We'll have a 2-minute opening statement from each candidate that we'll get, and then we've pre-selected 4 questions. Each candidate will have an opportunity in rotation to answer those questions with 2 minutes for each of those. And then on your table, or some of you were handed them when you came in, or some index cards, if you have a question that you'd like answered by the candidates, obviously we can't get everyone's question in, but if you'd like to fill that in on the index card, we'd certainly appreciate you doing that. Heather and Barb will be collecting those here in just a few short minutes, and we'll see if we can't get some of those questions answered too. And then at the end of the forum, when we conclude, these candidates will also be here and mingling about, so you'll have an opportunity to approach them with your questions in that regard too. And then at the end of the forum, we'll have a closing statement from each of the gentlemen here as well today. So if you have a question you'd like to write on those index cards, we ask that you accomplish that now, and they'll collect those so we don't have too much commotion going on during the forum. With that, I think we'll get started, and we'll start with opening statements from each candidate, and we'll go in order from the right to the left here as I look at them. So Stephen, if you'd like to begin, we'd sure appreciate it. And again, thanks to all the candidates for being a part of the forum today.
Well, like I said, first off, I want to start and say thank you to Heather and the Adult Community Center for hosting this, and for all you individuals to come down here so you guys get to know me a little bit better and get to understand why I should be the next Lyon County Sheriff. I was born and raised on a rural Marshall dairy farm where I attended the Marshall High School. After completing the Marshall High School with my high school diploma, I went on to the Alexandria Technical College where I received my associate degree in law enforcement and also conducted my, my skills portion for my law enforcement degree. Shortly after graduating college, I was able to get my first job at the Tracy Police Department. While living in Tracy for 3 years, I was honored to become a member of the Tracy Fire Department. After serving with the Tracy Police Department for 1 year, I ended up getting employed with the Lyon County Sheriff's Office. Since I've been on the Lyon County Sheriff's Office, I've had many different roles. Starting off, I was able to become the instructor in many things, as in taser, firearms, and I also have done welfare fraud for the Tri-County area. I have been promoted up to investigator with the Lyon County Sheriff's Office. I wear many different hats as an investigator, which includes doing general investigations and also serving as a supervisor, help over the patrol deputies. After living in Tracy for 3 years, I moved up to the city of Marshall where I bought a house and I lived for 10 years. While living in Marshall, I married my wife Holly, and since then we've had 2 kids, Brody and Layla. I've since moved back out to the rural community and live on the 3rd generation now family farm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Next up, Jim Marshall.
Alrighty, here's the deal. I don't think I can stand you guys. My mic is just a little bit different. So, first of all, I want to thank you Heath, and thank you Heather for giving us this opportunity, and thank you guys for taking time out of your schedules to join us here today on this crazy day, downtown celebration kind of, and this rainy day. My name is Jim Marshall, and I have filed for the Lyon County Sheriff position. I've been a police officer with the City of Marshall for 26 years. I grew up in a community just southeast of here, a town called Westbrook. I attended Mankato State University, where I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in law enforcement. After graduating from college, I moved to Sioux Falls to work for a family-run business that involved mechanical contracting. In 1992, I married my wife Allison, and my wife Allison was a high school math teacher here in the Marshall Public Schools. And I moved here, and we've lived here ever since. Allison and I have 3 children. I got a son, Samuel, that is a senior at St. John's University and is studying accounting. I've got a daughter, Julia, that attends South Dakota State University and is in the nursing program. And I have a daughter, Katie, that's going to be an 11th grader in the Marshall Public Schools this year. Throughout my 26 years, I've had a number of different roles with my time with the Marshall Police Department. Some of them I hope to comment on a little bit more as we work through this question and answer session today. But perhaps the most public position that I've ever had was that of a school resource officer, where I worked in our public schools for 8 years. I know some of you from that role, and I probably had the opportunity to work and teach some of your children. Since I filed my candidacy for the sheriff's position, I identified 3 areas that I really wanted to focus on. Number one being working close with the schools to address the violence and the threat of violence in our school systems. That's number 1 priority. Second priority is to work on stemming the epidemic, our drug epidemic, that we're seeing in Lyon County that affects the safety of all of our residents here in Lyon County. And then the third area is to work close with our health and mental health facilities in providing appropriate care for those that are struggling with mental health issues. So I thank you for your time today and look forward to further discussion as we move through this.
Thank you, Jim. Next is Tony Rolling.
Again, I would also like to thank Heather and everyone for allowing us to be here today. It gives you the opportunity to meet us as candidates and see what we're all about. I'm originally from the Tracy area, born and raised. I continue to raise my family there. I've been married to my wife Brenda for nearly 22 years, and we have 2 children, my daughter Alex and my son Mitchell. I'm a member of the St. Mary's Church in Tracy and a member of the Administrative Council there. I'm also a member of the Tracy Fire Department for nearly 20 years, and I'm an assistant fire chief with the City of Tracy. On a professional level, I started my career in 1997 in the City of Ballatin working part-time. Later that summer, I was hired full-time for the City of Tracy, where I was a patrol officer for over 6 years. In 2003, I was hired and came to the Lyon County Sheriff's Office. As a road deputy, I was in charge of the Safe and Sober program for 2 years. I was a welfare fraud investigator for 2 years, and I was assigned to the Emergency Response Unit, which is our area SWAT team. And I was a member of the SWAT team for 10 years and held the title of team leader. In 2008, I was promoted to investigator with the Sheriff's Office. As an investigator for the Sheriff's Office, like Stephen said, we wear many hats. We work on some of the most important cases that are involved in the county, and we assist other deputies with their investigations and assisting them. We do some supervisory work. In 2009, I was named and put on the Lyon County SMART team. The SMART team is a conglomerate, multidisciplinary team of professionals in different organizations, and we work to better our responses to sexual violence issues. I'm also a member of the RAP board, the Women's Rural Advocacy Program, which is an advocacy program assisting those victims in domestic violence. So that's me in a nutshell. It was a little quick, and I apologize for that. So,
thank you, Tony. Next is Eric Wallen.
All right, thank you. Good morning to everyone, and also thank you for coming. But my name's Eric Wallen. I was raised on a farm north of Minneota, attended Minneota High School. In 1998, I began my career at the Lyon County Sheriff's Office as a correctional officer. And for the past 20 years, my passion or desire to serve our community hasn't wavered. Over my tenure with the Sheriff's Office, I've rose through the ranks, being promoted 3 times from correctional officer to deputy to investigator and to my current role as sergeant, where I serve second in command under the sheriff in kind of a supervisory managerial type role. Over my career, I've valued continuing education and made that a priority for myself. Like the other candidates, we've all been to numerous continuing law enforcement education courses, but I did realize that practical law enforcement training doesn't prepare a person for a managerial role in an office with 50-plus employees and a multi-million-dollar budget. So I decided to go back to school to prepare myself for that more advanced managerial role someday, and I obtained 2 degrees. I obtained a bachelor's degree in law enforcement administration and a master's degree in business administration, both from Southwest Minnesota State here in Marshall. I did this with the idea that someday the sheriff's position would come open, and I wanted to make sure I had the practical experience to fill the job, but also the necessary educational background to be successful in the position. So my family and I live in Marshall. I've been living in Marshall probably about 18 years now. I'm an active member in our community. I'm a board member and a volunteer coach for the Marshall Youth Baseball Association, MABA. And my son plays in that organization. I've coached his team for several years. I'm also a past 2-term board chair and current board member for New Horizons Crisis Center. I volunteer with United Way from time to time, and I'm a member of our Marshall Lions Club and the Noon Rotary Group. And again, thank you all. I hope we get to answer most of your questions here as the day goes through. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Again, the index cards on your table, we'll have Barb and Heather come around and collect those. So if you'd gather those at the table and one person hold them up and they can come get those. And like I said, we'll have an opportunity at the end of today's forum to see if we can't get some of those questions answered. So again, thank you for taking the time and coming out with the thought of finding out more about these candidates to make the best decision coming up in the August primary. With that, we'll begin with our questions. We'll rotate through each of the gentlemen here, with Stephen Lawaji starting our first round of questioning. Question number 1 today is, why do you want to be the sheriff of Lyon County? And Stephen, if you would.
Well, the main reason why I want to be the next Lyon County Sheriff is ever since I was growing up in Lyon County, I was able to see, and I made the decision to get into law enforcement. I knew I wanted to work for Lyon County Sheriff's Office. After graduating from Alexandria Technical College, I knew I wanted to continue as my focus in Lyon County. I was fortunate to get employed with the city of Tracy, and then shortly after that with Lyon County. The reason why I wanted that is because being born and raised here, I'm very passionate about our community. I don't just have lots of friends in this community, I have lots of family. And having lots of family in this community, I am very invested in the long-term goal of our safety, and to make sure that Lyon County is not just a good place to live, but it's a great place to live, raise a family, and to be employed. Also, with me having younger kids, I'm very focused on our future to make sure that our community stays a safe place so my kids can grow up healthy and happy, and they can prosper as they grow up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim, why do you want to be sheriff of Lyon County?
Well, here's the deal. I've been blessed with many opportunities and experiences over the past 26 years with my employment with the City of Marshall and the Marshall Police Department that have prepared me for this position. I see this opening as a great opportunity, a new challenge for me to utilize those skills that I've learned through my leadership roles with the police department and the leadership training that I've received through the city. The chance to provide direction to a professional organization, to a professional staff that consists of deputies, of jailers, of dispatchers, and records personnel, to me would be rewarding. I know that this position is an upward swing for each one of us in terms of the formal advancement, but I also look at this as an opportunity for me to grow, an opportunity for me in my personal growth in terms of a profession that I've been committed to for over 26 years. I feel that the transition that I can make into the sheriff's office would be one that I can bring a new vision, maybe some fresh ideas that will be based off of well thought out plans and focus really to provide the best services that we can to the residents of Lyon County. This is the main reason why I would like to be your next Lyon County Sheriff.
Thank you. Tony Rolling, why do you want to be the Sheriff of Lyon County?
When I was making my decision to file for my candidacy for sheriff, it wasn't a decision I made lightly. I put a lot of thought into it. I thought of what kind of leadership I'd like to see in charge of the sheriff's office, what kind of direction I'd like to see the sheriff's office go, what kind of goals would I like to see the sheriff's office achieve in the next coming years. And as I thought about these, I could sit back and I could leave this in the hand of somebody else and hope and pray that they feel exactly the way I do. They have the same wants for leadership. They have the same goals in mind and the direction that I want the sheriff's office to see. Or do I stand up and say, I'll be the one to be that leader. I'll be the one to take this in the direction I think this office needs to go. So that's what I did. That was the decision I came up with. I'll be that decision maker. I'll be that leader. I'll go take this office where I think we need to go. So the best person to reach your goals and your ideals is you yourself. So that's why I'm here today.
Thank you. And Eric Wallen, why do you want to be the next Sheriff of Lyon County?
Yeah, I want to be the next Sheriff of Lyon County because I love working for the Sheriff's Office. This has been my dedication for my adult career. I wanted nothing more than to see this office succeed and provide the best public service and safety services that we can. In my 20 years of experience with the office, it's allowed me and given me the perspective and knowledge to show us and how to lead the office forward through the next decades. But in the past, it's been a privilege to work for the 3 previous sheriffs that I've worked for, and also it was very humbling and an accomplishment to be promoted to a management position under Sheriff Mather. I'm proud of what we've done thus far, and the sheriff and sheriff's offices, we don't get a lot of recognition or attention unless things are not going well. And I can say that we haven't gotten much attention, so I feel good about that. But that being said, there's always room for improvement. There's things that we can do better. And as I've been going around the past couple months, visiting with people, listening to the community, there's some things that have come up a few different times, and this is what I've gathered. People want to see an increased presence from our office in the schools that are in our jurisdiction. They want to see an increased presence in their community. There's people that I've talked to that ask me, well, who is the sheriff? I don't know any of the deputies. I haven't met them. That's something that I want to change. I want us to be more of an interactive agency. We know the community, we know our people, and they know us. I don't want to meet you because I have to meet you. I want to make sure that I meet you because I want to, and that you want to know us. And lastly, the third point that I've gathered is people want us to keep costs down. And I get that. I'm a taxpayer. I want to watch the bottom line as well. Priority for me is to continue to provide high-level public service and do it at a reasonable cost to the taxpayers. We need to look at things like collaborating with other agencies so we're not duplicating services. Look for alternative funding sources such as grants, and just look at cross-training so employees are well-versed in multiple roles as opposed to being very specialized, so we can utilize them across the office. But those are some of the things that I have heard, and those are reasons why I want to become the next sheriff, is so I can give the people of Lyon County what they're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Our second question today will begin with Jim Marshall. Jim, what distinguishes you from the other candidates for Lyon County Sheriff?
You know, I think, excuse me, I think my formal education, my leadership training that I've received, my professional certification in emergency management have provided a foundation for which my 26 years of experience continues to build off of. My assignment as a school resource officer, my promotions to corporal, to sergeant, to interim chief of police have provided me a lot of opportunities and a lot of responsibilities. Responsibilities that include overseeing over staff of approximately 30 people, scheduling, training of officers and to help be part of overseeing a budget of nearly $3 million. I've proven myself through these leadership roles, and I've proven that I've been able to work well with others, not just in law enforcement, but outside of law enforcement as well. You know, Eric mentioned a little bit about school safety and the priority of getting in our schools. You know, my interest in providing a safe learning environment for our kids is nothing new. It's something that I've made clear for many years. It's not something that I just think we should be doing, and it's not something that I just started talking about 2 months ago. It's something that I've been dedicated to and committed to over 20 years of my career to ensuring that we provide a safe learning environment for our children. Early on in my career, I became a DARE instructor, and I taught the DARE curriculum in our elementary and in our junior high schools. I had the privilege to partner with our school district to implement one of the very first school resource officer programs in our area, a program that received a national recognition by the Department of Justice for best practices that was eventually printed and published in one of their books that they sent out regarding best practices. You know, so what distinguishes me and sets me apart maybe from the others, I feel it's my proven leadership skills, my ability to work well with others outside of the law enforcement community, and the experience of 26 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Tony Rolling, what distinguishes you from the other candidates for Lyon County Sheriff?
What distinguishes me, I have over 6.5 years of experience as a police officer in different communities, Ballatin and the city of Tracy. I have over 15 years of experience as a Lyon County Sheriff's deputy. I have experience at 10 years as a SWAT operator and a team leader on the SWAT team. I have 10 years experience as an investigator with the Sheriff's Office. I have, on the other side of public safety, I have over 20 years experience in the fire service. I have about 20 years experience with the city of Tracy on their fire department, and for the last several years I've been an assistant fire chief. With that, I'm part of the, as you can say, the administration of the fire department. I'm in charge of all the training and in charge of other captains on the fire department. With that experience, that gives me supervisory experience, in charge of 25 other men on the scene of whether it be a car accident or a large fire or some other type of scene that we're at. It gives me scene management skills. It gives me incident command skills. It makes me a little bit of a broader spectrum across the board. So I have the law enforcement side, I have the fire department side. I think it all comes together and gives me a good broad spectrum of a better leader and a better person. So,
thank you, Tony. Eric Wallen, what distinguishes you from the other candidates for Lyon County Sheriff?
I think the one thing that distinguishes me from the other candidates is my experience with the Sheriff's Office. So I'm the only candidate that's been with the office for 20 years. I'm the only one that holds a supervisory role within our office. And I've put the time in. I have experience in all aspects of the office. I started in the jail. I've worked as a deputy, I've worked as an investigator, and in my current role as a sergeant, which has given me experience into our 911 dispatch center as well. I've learned how to dispatch, and as part of my job, I do supervise that area. So I've had experience in all facets of the office. I know how each piece of it works. But also, I have new ideas. I don't want to just keep the status quo going, and I think it's this experience that's going to allow me to move the office forward. You know, it does take some time to understand how the office works before you can decide what needs to be changed, and I think with my time serving in the office, I already have that knowledge of the day-to-day operations. And there is a common misconception that the role of the sheriff is law enforcement and law and order, enforcing the rules and the laws, but in reality, the role of the sheriff themselves is more of a managerial role. We manage 52 employees, a $4.2 million budget, okay, and it's dawned on me a few years ago, 5-6 years ago, that the sheriff's office, it's much like a medium-sized business. You know, you have a good handful of employees, you have a large operating budget that you have to manage. Okay, and if you look at those businesses, the people running them are people with managerial backgrounds, advanced degrees of different natures, And that is why again, like I said, I went back to school. I wanted to have that educational background, a master's degree and administration type degrees. So I was equivalent in the same playing fields to manage an operation of such a magnitude. So I think it's and the people of Lyon County deserve that too, as someone who's going to run your sheriff's office. Because I think those skills that I've learned in those educational backgrounds that'll help prepare me to do a good job with this role. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And Stephen Lawaji, what distinguishes you from the other candidates for Lyon County Sheriff?
When I was thinking of what distinguishes me from the other candidates, I was going over all my qualifications and things I've done in my career, just like the other candidates have. But I thought I would go at a little deeper level. The thing that distinguishes me is that I was born and raised in Lyon County. I also currently live in the rural community out in the county, which is protected by the Lyon County deputies. By that, I think it gives me a whole new perspective on what my goal as a sheriff's office whole is. Because at the end of the day, when my family needs help, either emergency call or just for a call of service, it's going to be the sheriff's office deputies that are going to respond to my residents to help my family. By this, I'm very passionate to make sure that the Lyon County deputies, dispatchers, jailers, everybody is performing at the highest levels, so that when they come out to help my family to render first aid or to investigate a crime, they are going to give my family the highest level. Because if they give my family the highest level and treat my family, I know they'll treat your family and the community, the citizens of this county at the highest level. Also, being the youngest candidate up here, is I have to hold myself accountable. Not just over one term, not just over 2 terms, but multiple terms. And this is something where after the first term, I can go to all the citizens of Lyon County, look you guys in the eye, and know that I've held myself accountable to make sure that this community has stayed a safe place and a good place to raise our family. And if not, then I understand you guys might need to elect someone else, but I know that won't happen. Because I'm going to hold myself accountable because my family lives in this community, and I want to make sure this continues to be a great place. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Our third question today, we'll start with Tony Rolling. What skills do you possess that are most important to being an effective sheriff, and how does your previous job experience lend itself to that?
Well, as I thought about these questions that we did get beforehand, I'll be honest with you, put some thought into it, and I thought of all the different skills that a sheriff needs to have and possess, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And the one that I narrowed it down to, the biggest one, is management. He is a manager. Is he out answering calls? Is he out stopping speeders on the road anymore? No, he's not. He's managing the office. He's managing the jail. He's making sure that the proper people are in place to run the facility, such as the jail. There's good administration, there's good employees doing good jobs. He's managing and working, making sure that the rules of the Department of Corrections are being met. He's managing the, excuse me, he's managing the 911 center. He's making sure that up-to-date modern equipment is being utilized, and he has good people working behind those controls and doing a good job and offering good service to our community. The sheriff is also a manager of the law enforcement side of the deputies. He's making sure that he has goals and that there's a clear direction on how we're going to reach these goals and the things that I want to accomplish, and communicating those. He's managing the budget. I mean, it's been brought up a couple times. It's a multi-million-dollar budget. He needs to be able to manage and work with that and stay within the confines, yet offer really good services and the best service possible to our community. You give them what they deserve. So, to me, I think the main part of a sheriff is going to be a manager and being able to do that. And some of the skills I possess, I can work with people. I can work with a lot of people. I do that in the daily part of my job, whether it's with human services or different advocacy groups or people that come in with complaints, or if I'm interviewing a suspect. I can communicate with people, and I can talk, and I can deal with people. And that's one of my strengths that I have. You know, if you have a common goal, you can work together and find your way to get there. So.
Thank you, Tony. Eric Wallen, what skills do you possess that are most important to being an effective sheriff, and how does your previous job experience lend itself to that?
Yeah, I agree with Tony that management is a very important skill. I chose a different one when I thought about this. I decided that being an effective communicator is a good skill or a top skill that the sheriff needs to have. The role of the sheriff, it requires him or her to work with multiple organizations, multiple partners, and different groups within and outside the sheriff's office. And you need to be able to communicate with those groups so that you're on the same page, you're working towards a common goal that's good for all the people of Lyon County. So, for example, I sit on boards with the New Horizons Crisis Center, on the MABA board, and we have to communicate our goals, our directives, what we want to do with those organizations. Within the sheriff's office, I need to communicate the direction of the sheriff to the staff and make sure that we're running the office in the format that the sheriff has set forth, has dictated. But being an effective communicator is not only passing out, disseminating, relaying information. It's also, and I believe the most important of it, is also being able to listen, and listen with an open mind and understanding. So it's my belief that this is one of the most important components of it, and our office is only as good as the feedback we get from the community. And that's why a priority I would also have is to be out in the public, to come to things like this and listen to the people, see what you have to say, what your concerns are, what your desires are for how you think the office is going, and what maybe needs to be changed. And aside from listening to the community, I also need to listen to our coworkers and our staff within the sheriff's office. It's like I said, I've worked in many aspects of the office, but by no means do I call myself an expert. But I do have a lot of expert staff that get up and come to work every day at the Lyon County Sheriff's Office, and they have for years. And I will listen to those people and their expertise in determining how we're going to run the office and what directions we will go and how we can make the jobs easier for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Stephen Lawaji, what skills do you possess that are most important to being a sheriff? Previous job experience lend itself to that?
I think one of the biggest skills that a sheriff needs to have is someone who's financially responsible. While growing up on the rural dairy farm, I watched my parents struggle. Watch them struggle through some hard times on the dairy farm. And my parents instilled me some core values on how to make sure I'm financially responsible. First off, is never to buy anything you don't need, and make sure you have the money to afford it. Secondly, save for tomorrow, because you just don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. These are things that I practice today through my personal life at home, through my campaign, everywhere. I use these values to make sure that I will be financially responsible to the citizens of Lyon County. Also, I think a good sheriff needs to make sure they are a good communicator and take good care of not just the citizens of Lyon County, but also the employees of Lyon County. I feel that the employees of Lyon County are very important. They need to be taken care of because they are citizens, and they're the ones who are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And without them, the sheriff's office wouldn't be nothing. And they're the ones that are providing you guys the services that you need. And I know if I take good care of the employees, they will take good care of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Jim Marshall, what skills do you possess that are most important to being an effective sheriff, and how does your previous job experience lend itself to that?
Well, just as Eric and Tony and Steve have kind of indicated, there's a number of skills I think that are important and critical to being a good judgment, to problem solve, the ability to be resourceful and show initiative, and encourage teamwork and collaboration within the sheriff's office and outside of the sheriff's office. You know, any great leader that you think of, you usually remember them because of their abilities, their values, their beliefs, their accomplishments. But what you don't see is how they became a great leader. It's not something you're necessarily born with. I think it comes through hard work, through dedication, through commitment, through self-sacrifice. Sometimes courage courage to stand up for what is right, and courage to stand up for what you believe in. These, I think, are the skills, the traits that are critical to a leadership position. These are skills and traits that I think that I brought to the table, that I have demonstrated over the 26 years and in the leadership position for the last 15 years with the Marshal Police Department.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to our fourth question of the forum, and we'll start with Eric Wallen. Eric, what's the biggest need currently of the Sheriff's Department, and how would you work to fill that need?
You know, you will hear the biggest needs very commonly spoken of: school violence, drugs, mental health issues. And I agree that these are needs that our office faces that we need to deal with. And they're needs across the country. All law enforcement are facing those. But with my role in the Sheriff's Office, a supervisory management type position, I have a little different perspective on this. And I think our biggest need for Lyon County Sheriff's Office is the ability to retain and attract good quality employees. I mean, while we do our very best to hire the best employees we can, the society has changed. We're not getting the applicants that we used to. When I started, we would get dozens of applications for a deputy position, and now we're lucky to get a dozen. And that's just the nature of the beast with careers people are choosing and going to school for nowadays. And we're competing with many, many agencies for those limited pool. So as sheriff, I feel it's my job to be an advocate for the employees we do have and make sure that I provide a great working environment that's going to want to keep them here. It just makes good business sense to retain that experience within the office. Training new employees and turnover is very expensive. It costs us money to train. It costs us money to pay overtime to fill the vacant shifts while the new candidates are in training. And I can't even put a dollar amount on the experience that we lose if someone would choose to leave our agency and go somewhere else. That's irreplaceable. And the people of Lyon County deserve good, qualified applicants to handle their serious situations when they call. I mean, I could say anyone's going to want. If you call 911, you prefer to have someone that's been in that chair 10 plus years and can do the job with their eyes closed, as opposed to constantly having new people who are still learning. And that's something that we need to work on. That's a need we have. And as far as my aspirations as in the career as sheriff go, it's my aspiration just to be the sheriff that the people want me to be. It's not about what I want, where I want to go with the office. It's like I've maintained all day. It's where does the public want the office to go? What are the services that you feel are important? What do you want us to provide? Is it school safety? Is it more involvement in our community? Is it, keeping costs low? Those type of things. And that's what I aspire to complete, is to provide those services that the citizens of Lyon County have told me they want. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Eric. Stephen Lawadji, what's the biggest need of the Sheriff's Department currently, and how would you work to fill that need?
I think it's been obviously mentioned a couple times here, and the school safety is obviously the #1 top priority, because having little kids, knowing that our greatest asset in Lyon County is our children. And that is something I'm very passionate about, to make sure that we take good care of our kids within our school. And that's something that I plan on doing. But also, I want to look beyond that too. One other way to help make sure we take care of our kids is in my first 4 years, I want to take a very hard look on implementing a canine dog within Lyon County. It's been over 15 years since any community in Lyon County has had a canine dog in any of the communities. I think this is doing a very disservice to the citizens of Lyon County, and this is why something I'm going to take a hard look into. There's a community member who has already reached out, who is willing to donate this dog. And this dog is something that I think will help curb the problem with our drugs, help get more drugs off the street, and hopefully save some lives for people who might be overdosing. Also with this dog, I hope to provide safety, as if a little children would wander off in a cornfield, have this dog be able to track this little child. If an individual with dementia walks away from their house and is lost in the woods, this dog will hopefully track down that person. I think by us not having this dog, it's doing the citizens of Lyon County a very big disservice. And that is something that I'm going to take a very hard look at in my first 4 years as sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Jim, what is the biggest need of the Sheriff's Department currently, and how would you work to fill that need?
You know, I think I have two responses to this question, and responses, one's going to be external and the other one's going to be internal. I think the external challenge that we face with the Sheriff's Department and with all of our law enforcement is the issue that we're struggling with drug abuse and drug addiction within our communities. It's gotten to the point where it's now threatened. I think it's a threat to our public safety and in our communities. I think that addressing this issue is going to require a community effort, an effort that needs strong focus on a well-structured enforcement program, but also an effort when it comes to education. Things kind of go full circle in life. We used to have the DARE program, and that kind of worked its way out of the school. I think it's very important that we find an alternative to that program, bring back in the school and teach our kids the consequences and the effects of drug use. Internally, I think one of the biggest challenges that we face, I'm going to agree with Eric, is the recruitment and retention of employees. The Marshal Police Department's been fortunate to get 2 deputies employed with us in the last couple of years. It's a big issue. I think that we need to work close with the leadership within the county to find ways that we can provide leadership opportunities for employees, and also to make sure that we have a fair compensation program in place. I tell you what, you guys, we've been through some of the darkest days in the history of law enforcement, and we're seeing this trend, a spiraling downward trend of people that are interested in going into law enforcement. And we're getting to the point, just as Eric said, that the people that are willing to do it and the options that we have for hiring people are getting less and less. I share my experience, Eric shared his. Mine was that when I applied for a job with the City Marshal in 1992, there was 130-some applicants for one position. We've hired 2 officers off a list of 6 applicants. So we know that this is something that we need to address, and we need to be competitive, and I think the Sheriff's Office needs to be competitive in this as well. In terms of my career aspirations, I'm going to look at this 2 different ways, maybe short-term and long-term. I think my short-term aspiration or goal with the Sheriff's Department is to work close with the employees so I get a good understanding on how the Sheriff's Office works and what each and every role is of everybody that works with the Sheriff's Department. I would also like to step back and take a look at what they're doing well and what they're strong at, and then also step back and take a look at what we can improve upon. My long-term goals or aspiration would include working with the public, with the community within Lyon County to bring forward this philosophy of community policing, to work close with our communities to ensure that we are doing everything possible to make sure that we have a safe and better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Tony Rolling, what is the biggest need that you see the Sheriff's Department has currently, and how would you work to fill that need?
One of the main issues internally, I think, is communications. Communication is vital in everything that we do in our daily life, whether it's our marriage, whether it's talking with our kids, coworkers, peers, our bosses, our employees, whatever it is. Communication is huge in our lives. And we need to be able, as a sheriff, to be able to communicate to the other people that are working with us what our goals are, where do we want to go, what's our direction, how are we going to get there. We need to be able to communicate that. And to pass that down to our administration, to our supervisors, all the way down to the deputies. So we have a clearer path of where we want to go and how we're going to get there. Without that, everybody's just running in circles. We have to have a clear path and need to be able to communicate. I want to give trust and support to the deputies and to the other staff of the Sheriff's Office. You put good people in place to do their job, you give them the trust that they can do the job, and you give them the support so they can do the job. You're going to have good employees, you're going to have retention of those employees that are going to want to stay. My aspirations, you guys are lucky. You guys are very lucky, because I think a lot of us are on the same board with a lot of the same issues that we have out there. One of my issues is community relationships. We as a Sheriff's Office, our jurisdiction is the whole county, yes. We also work in all the different communities in Lyon County. We need to be closer to those communities. We need to be more involved in those communities and their community events. We need to be in those schools like these other candidates have said. We need to be in the schools and offering them their support and helping them with issues that they have in regards to school violence. Just a couple weeks ago, the city of Tracy, Chief Lichty with the Tracy Police Department, he ran his elementary school and his high school through ALICE training. And ALICE training is training for staff and how to respond to school violence. I would imagine that the Lakeview School in Cottonwood, the middle school in Russell, and the Lynn School, they'd welcome us with open arms to come in there and give them some training, give them some support, and help them with the issues that they have. That's something we should be doing. We're the police department for some of these communities, and we need to take that role a little bit more serious. We also have the area drug task force. Sometimes we rely too heavily on the drug task force to do all of our drug investigations. We need to work with our staff, put people in the right places where we can do some of this work on our own. We can't always rely on other people to do our work. We need to step up and do some of this of our own and help them. So that's kind of where I sit.
Thank you, Tony. That's the conclusion of our questions that we had set forth for the candidates at the beginning of this forum. As I take a look over your questions, I thank you for your submissions. We really appreciate that. I'll go with the easiest one first. What are the ages of all the candidates? So if each of you would just mention that. That's a simple one.
I don't even have to write that
Stephen,
one
we'll start with you.
I'm 34 years old.
Jim?
I am 50 years old.
Tony?
I'm 46 years old.
Eric?
39.
All right, thank you.
39?
With that, just looking over all these, we don't have time for them all, unfortunately, as the senior dining will take over this room here in just a few minutes. But looking over the questions, I see one common theme, and that would be addressing the drug issue in Lyon County and the surrounding areas. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that and what you would do to address the problem. Stephen, we'll start with you.
I believe that there are drugs, obviously, in our community, and it is a problem. Now, I'm a realist. I know that we're never going to be able to stop all the drug problems that are within Lyon County. I think we can do a better job of curbing some of the problems, and there are some things that I think we can do at a better job. For starters, I'm a big supporter of our drug task force, and I think with the right people on the task force, they can make a big difference. Also, I want to encourage our deputies to give these problem places or people or residents a lot of focused attention to help try to curb some of these individuals using, selling, and doing drugs within their communities. Also, like I said earlier about a canine dog, I believe that is a very big deterrent because at the end of the day, a dog can see things that we can't, and they see with their nose. We all know that we can hide things, some places in our house that someone may never find, but with a dog, they can see through everything. And that's just some of the things that I feel that we can do to help improve on cutting down the use and abuse of drugs in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Jim?
Heath, I think I've somewhat commented on this question towards the end there when I talked about some of the challenges that I think we face with the Sheriff's Office and just law enforcement in general. And to be clear, I think this needs to be a community effort, an effort that obviously involves enforcement from our end, and an aggressive maybe response and enforcement because we know that we're losing the battle. But it also requires a commitment from your part. Look, we're all taxpayers and we try to do things financially responsible, but it might require a little bit bigger commitment. I also think education is a huge piece of this puzzle. Like I said, I used to teach the DARE curriculum in Marshal Public Schools for many years, and it kind of phased out mainly because there's such a need for students having enough educational time with different subjects. But I think we have to somehow be creative and imaginative to bring in a new curriculum into our schools and work with our youth. I think we're seeing this pendulum had started to swing backwards, and now it's swinging forward at a fast rate that we need to do something, and just sitting and talking about it isn't working.
Thank you, Jim. Tony?
21 years ago when I got into law enforcement, drugs was a big issue. That's never changed and it never will change. It's always going to be a problem. When I first got into law enforcement, we were up against methamphetamine, we were up against cocaine, we were up against marijuana, all these normal things that you hear. Today's crisis that we're hearing about is the opioid crisis, and that's something that we're all going to be talking about throughout this campaign, and we're talking about today. The opioid crisis that we're in is almost a pandemic throughout the whole country. It's not involving just Los Angeles or New York City or Chicago. It's here in Lyon County. We're dealing with it here. We're dealing with overdoses here in Lyon County. When you have your law enforcement carrying a medication called Narcan, Narcan is a chemical that basically blocks the receptors in your brain to help with an overdose, kind of reverse the effects, kind of the easy way to explain it. When your police officers are carrying that, when your state patrolmen are carrying Narcan, in your ambulances, they're carrying it and they're using it all the time. We're having overdoses here in Lyon County. It's something that's happening. It's a big issue and we need to work on that. We need to have the community education. We need to keep working with our, take it to the box, bringing in our medications from the doctors, our different medications, our opioids that we get in our prescriptions. We need to get them out of our houses if we're not using them. That curbs burglaries and thefts and things like that. But we need to have that community involvement, like Jim said. We need to have people helping us with this as well. As we can work together, it's something that we can hopefully put a, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to stop it, but we can slow it down and we can do some good. We can't always rely, as I said earlier, on our drug task force to do all our work. We need to do some of that work on our own. We need to do more of that work ourselves. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Eric?
I'd have to agree with pretty much everything everyone else has said. It's a huge problem, and it's a multifaceted problem. There's a lot of ways to combat it, but like they said, I don't think we're ever going to eliminate it completely. A canine dog, great resource to have, but we need to complement that with deputies who are trained in drug investigations. You know, laws prevent us just from bringing a dog around randomly to places and sniffing and seeing what we find. But we need to have the trained officers to locate and investigate the places where we're going to bring the dog and utilize the dog to find the concealed drugs. We need to focus on enforcement, greater enforcement of the drug investigations. Our drug task force could always stand to have more help. They run, and more staffing would be very beneficial. As far as education, we need to educate the kids. The DARE program I thought was a very good program. Like Jim said, it's kind of phased its way out of the schools because they have their own criteria for education that needs to be met. But we need to find a way to find a little bit of time to get some of that drug education back to our youth at an early age in hopes that they'll carry that into their more adult years. And we need to look at eliminating temptation. We have the Take It to the Box program, get the prescription pills, which are a huge increasing drug abuse. Get them out of your homes so they're not stolen, so they're not sold to other people to get highs, and we'll just get rid of them. And then also prevention things like the Narcan that Tony talked about to keep, you know, if people do overdose, we have a way to try and help them and keep them from dying, basically. I was just at a call a couple weeks ago. A young man overdosed on cocaine, and the ambulance arrived. They administered the Narcan, and within 30 seconds, he was sitting up and talking. And without that, it may not have fared very well for that young man. But we also need to look at other things. As sheriff, I think we're in a unique position where we can use our role to work with legislatures and other larger organizations to look at things about changing the laws, increasing penalties. It's kind of went against us lately, some of the rules and laws that they've set forth that have made it less, they've reduced the penalties for possession and sales of drugs. And that's something I think as a sheriff we need to lobby against to push back the other way and hope that deters some of the activity as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Another of the common themes that we've heard today is working with the budget of the Lyon County Sheriff's Department. Tell us a bit about your thoughts on where it sits now, where it needs to be, and what role collaboration might play with other agencies in that. And Jim, we'll start with you.
Well, great. I'm the only one that is not necessarily real familiar with the Sheriff's Office budget. I can tell you about the Marshal Police Department budget. Here's the deal. My experience, so I think I need to just comment on, is being the interim chief of police a couple of times during my career, I've had the opportunity to work with our council to plan, to prepare budget of nearly $3 million to be responsible to how those funds are spent. It's a constant struggle, and we try to be responsible to the citizens. Again, I keep saying we're all taxpayers. We don't like frivolous spending. But the money that we do get allotted to us is used very wisely, and I'm sure that's the same with the Sheriff's Department. We need all the resources that we can get to work through a lot of these struggles.
Thank you, Jim. Tony?
My thoughts with the budget are this. Obviously, that's a big issue every election. You always hear it brought up all the time. Do I have a lot of experience with the Sheriff's Office budget? I'll be honest with you, I don't. You know, when my children were attending the St. Mary's School in Tracy, I was on the education committee, essentially the school board. You know, every month we'd go over financial statements and become familiar with what's going on with the budgets and things like that and making recommendations. As my children left that school, I became a member of the administrative council at the church. And again, going over financial statements every month and going over making recommendations to the church and what should be done with the school and with the church. When I was in charge of the Safe and Sober program for the Sheriff's Office for 2 years, I'd write a grant every year and get allotted money. It would be my responsibility to budget that money, use it for enforcement and for wages, and make sure it's getting used properly and effectively. With the fire department as an assistant chief, you know, I have some experience with operating budget of the Tracy Fire Department. You know, we go over things once in a while and see where things sit. So, although I don't have a lot of experience with the Sheriff's Office budget, I have an idea of how things work. Obviously, all of us here are going to be responsible as much as we can with the budget, keeping you in mind, trying to keep costs down, and giving you the best services possible. So, that's what I have.
Thank you, Tony. Eric?
I have a little experience with our budget. You know, the budget set by the sheriff in conjunction with the county board and county administration. But in my role, when we order supplies, we spend money on things. We have to keep the budget in mind. You know, what do we have left in the bank? What can we afford? And you have to make decisions based on that. And obviously, as Stephen has maintained, you know, you don't want to spend money you don't have. So we always have to be frugal and conscientious when we are looking for those type of things. Other options that I see as beneficial, and I've mentioned, is collaboration. We don't need to duplicate services. Okay, if we can work together with other agencies to provide a service that'll save us both money, that's great. We've done things in my time here as sergeant, we've done things such as upgrade our dispatch center with different pieces of technology. We're sharing telephone backbone equipment with multiple counties to reduce the cost to all agencies by sharing these pieces of equipment. And with technology nowadays, that's a very feasible thing to do. It's almost like you have your own, but yet it's a shared piece. And we also need to look at things like grants. I obtained a boat and water safety grant that bought the county a new boat here about 7-8 years ago. And we've worked with organizations like Action Sports. They've lent us a four-wheeler to use. And if you've heard, they have this ATV course or track down by Russell. And we felt it beneficial to have an ATV in our office in case we need to respond out there. We didn't have one. We were able to partner with Action Sports, and they're giving us one to use for the season free of charge. It's things like that that we need to really focus on, because the money we are allotted is limited, and there's always a bigger need than the money we have. So we have to be creative in how we can get the services and the equipment that we need.
Thank you, Eric. Stephen?
Well, like I said earlier, the budget and being financially responsible is something that I'm very passionate about, and it's something that I take very serious, not just at work, but obviously in my personal life. I have been fortunate enough to sit down with Sheriff Mather and go over the budget and have a copy of the budget. So I've been able to look over and review it, and I have a better understanding on how our budget is set up. I do think running the budget is a delicate act, because we need to have enough money to make sure that we provide great service to you citizens, but obviously keep it as low as possible so then we're not doing a burden onto your guys' hard-earned money. I think, like the other candidates have said, there's always ways of finding, or new ways of finding money, either through grants or partnerships with community members. So I believe that working and going forward, it's just important that we all, or that I take a hard look at the budget, find areas that may be duplicated or areas where we can cut from the budget. Because with our technology changing, there's areas that I believe where we can maybe trim a little bit off of each area in the budget that will help reduce some of the costs of our budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And with that, we'll move on to our closing statement from each candidate. And for that, we'll start with Tony Rowling.
My closing statement is this. You look at my signs, we all have signs out in the community. Mine are the yellow and black ones, by the way. You know, whether it's my signs or the literature I hand out at parades or to the people that I visit with, on the bottom of each of those it says committed to service. My adult life, let me go back a little bit. Growing up, I learned as a child that you help people if you can. If there's people in need, you help them. And as an adult, I've tried to carry that on, whether it's through my kids' school, through my church, through the fire department, or through my career as a law enforcement officer. I'm serving the community, and that's where my true passion is helping people in need and doing what I can for them, being committed to service. And that's my whole mantra through this whole thing, is doing what I can for you, the people of Lyon County. So I just ask for your support when it comes to the election days, and if I'm the guy that you want, then please step up and mark that name off the ballot. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Eric Wallen.
Again, I thank you all for coming and participating in this event. Hopefully it was informative. It gives you a little clearer picture on who each of us are. But as citizens of Lyon County, you all are going to play a very important role in determining who's the most qualified person to be the next sheriff of Lyon County. And I ask, as you make that determination, I ask that you consider, what is the role of the sheriff? You know, what are the job duties that sheriff's going to do? And I've said, quite honestly, it's a management role. And I think others have said that as well. And so please consider that as you're determining who's going to be a good manager, who can lead an office with the multi-million-dollar budget, who can manage and supervise and lead the 50-plus employees that our office has. The citizens of Lyon County, you deserve someone that has strong leadership skills, developed management skills, and experience within the organization, which will ensure a smooth transition from one sheriff onto the next. So if you do your research, you're going to see that we are all on the same page when it comes to what our goals are. We all want the absolute best for the people of Lyon County. Each and every one of us, that's what we ultimately want. So therefore, I urge you to look beyond that. Look at our training, look at our education, look at our experience, look at our community involvement outside of work. It's these things that are going to set us apart from one another, and look at those as you form your decisions. So, and the first step in this important process occurs during that primary election coming up. And I ask that you each please go out and vote, first of all, but make sure you vote for the qualified candidate that has knowledge of the sheriff's office, has experience with the sheriff's office when you make your vote on August 14th. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Stephen Lawaji.
Well, like I said, I'd like to thank everyone for coming down to learning a little bit more about me and why I should be the next Lyon County Sheriff. Like we all talked about, we are all well qualified, and we all have a lot of experiences that that qualifies for this job. But I think as citizens of this county, you want somebody who you can relate to, someone who knows you and the people. And as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this job and about this community, because I believe I am one of you people who live in this county, and I have a lot of roots within Lyon County. One thing I'd like to offer to all you individuals is, if you ever have any questions, I'd like you to reach out to me, because as sheriff, I think it's very important that the sheriff be someone who is accessible to the people. If they have questions, comments, or concerns, for them to reach out to the sheriff. I encourage you guys to all reach out to me either by telephone, email. I'll even come and meet you in person, and we'll talk about your concerns. Also, I'd like to encourage you guys all to vote for August 14th, because your vote does matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Jim Marshall.
First of all, I want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your schedules today. It's been a great opportunity to share a little bit about ourselves and a little bit about what my vision is for the Sheriff's Office. I've been blessed. I've been blessed with many years of experience and opportunity with the Marshal Police Department that have prepared me for this position. I take this very seriously. I think it's a great opportunity to utilize those skills, again, that I've learned and make this transition into the Sheriff's Department fairly smooth. I'm president of different boards within our community. I've given direction and guidance and been president of 2 boards where we've had building projects that exceeded $2 million each. I have been given just wonderful opportunities in that sense. I kind of, just like Eric said, I hope you take a good look at maybe what we bring to the table. Not so much what we say we're going to do, but I want you to take a look at what we've done for the last 20 years, and I think that you will clearly see where we all stand and what we're capable of doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And with that, that brings to a close our forum with the Lyon County Sheriff's candidates. Again, a hand for them coming out today and participating. A couple of quick reminders and thank yous. A thank you to Heather Radke and Barb Lipinski here at the Marshall Adult Community Center for hosting today's event. Our thanks also to the City of Marshall for allowing us to use this space and utilize Studio One, who is here today. A reminder that you can go to marshallstudio1tv.com and you'll be able to review this event and many others that happen throughout the community. So our thanks to Alex and his crew here. And also a reminder that this forum will be rebroadcast this afternoon on 1400 AM and 1017 FM KMHL, and you'll be able to hear that. We'll also post that at our website, marshallradio.net. Again, the candidates will be about as we wrap up today, so again, a thanks to everyone for coming out today. We sure appreciate your time, and we do appreciate that you want to be an educated voter. A reminder, August 14th is the primary election to move this from 4 candidates down to 2, so I encourage you to vote at that point in time. Thank you again for attending. Have a good day.